If you have already been betrayed once, there is a biological reason why your brain is currently wired to seek out the exact same type of woman who destroyed you the first time. Behavioral observations suggest that many men fall into a cycle of familiar pain, where they subconsciously choose partners who mirror the toxic traits of their ex, simply because their nervous system has mistaken chaos for chemistry. You think you are just unlucky in love, but the truth is usually found in your lack of a psychological screening process. Most men go into the dating world with their hearts open and their eyes closed, hoping that love will be enough to change a woman's character. But character is a fixed asset, and if you don't learn how to spot the red flags of the soul before you sign the contract of a relationship, you are essentially volunteering for your next heartbreak. If you are tired of being the victim of infidelity and you want to ensure that your next partner is a woman of integrity, you need to watch this entire briefing. I am going to show you how to audit a woman's past, her values, and her behavior so you never have to sit in a courtroom or an empty house wondering how did this happen again. I'm not here to argue with the world about what a real man is. I'm here for the men who are quietly trying to get their lives together. The ones rebuilding, the ones learning discipline the hard way, the ones who got knocked down and decided to stand back up. If you're working on yourself, even if nobody sees it, this channel is for you. Subscribe if you're serious about growth. Leave a comment so I know you're here. No noise, no hype, just men doing the work. The first psychological barrier you must dismantle is the myth of the blank slate. Behavioral patterns show that a woman's future behavior is almost always written in her past actions. Many men want to be the hero who saves a woman from her own history. They hear about her past infidelities, her wild years, or her history of monkey branching from one man to another, and they tell themselves, "She just hasn't met a man like me yet." This is the savior delusion. Psychological observations suggest that character is like a river. It can change its path slightly, but the water always flows in the same direction. If she has a history of treating men like disposable utilities, she will eventually treat you the same way. You are the victim of optimism bias when you ignore the data of her life in favor of the feelings in your heart. To avoid choosing another cheater, you must become a practitioner of character forensics. This isn't about being an investigator, it's about being a realist. When a woman tells you about her past, she is handing you a map of how she handles conflict, boredom, and commitment. If her map is full of detours and burned bridges, why would you think she will drive straight with you? Behavioral observations suggest that women who have cheated in the past have a 3.5 times higher likelihood of repeating the pattern compared to those who have remained loyal. This isn't a judgment, it's a probabilistic reality. Your prefrontal cortex knows this, but your limbic system, the part of your brain that seeks pleasure, wants to ignore it. Psychological observations suggest that the most reliable indicator of a future cheater is a lack of internal accountability. When you are getting to know a woman, listen to how she talks about her ex-partners. If every man in her past was a narcissist, a loser, or abusive, and she takes zero responsibility for the collapse of those relationships, you are looking at a red flag the size of a skyscraper. This is the victim narrative. A woman who cannot admit her own faults in the past will never be able to handle the friction of a long-term marriage without looking for an exit or a distraction. She is essentially telling you that when things get hard, and they will, it will be 100% your fault in her mind. Let's look at the path of Felix. Felix was a man who had been cheated on by his first wife. He spent 2 years healing, or so he thought, and then he met Sarah. Sarah was exciting, she was beautiful, and she had a tragic story about how all her previous boyfriends had let her down. Felix felt a deep, protective instinct for her. He ignored the fact that Sarah was still friends with several men she used to date. He ignored the fact that she had cheated once in college, but said it was because she was young and confused. Felix is the loser in our story because he chose excitement over evidence. He married Sarah thinking that his superior value and his stable life would be enough to keep her loyal. But behavioral patterns suggest that Sarah was addicted to the validation of new men. Within 4 years, Felix discovered that Sarah was using work trips to reconnect with the very friends he had worried about. Felix was devastated, not just because he was betrayed again, but because he realized he had ignored every single warning sign Sarah had given him on day 1. He was a victim of the familiar trap. He chose a woman who mirrored the instability of his past because his brain had labeled that chaos as passion. He didn't lose because he wasn't a good man. He lost because he wasn't a discerning man. He was trying to build a skyscraper on a swamp because the swamp looked pretty at sunset. The second major screening tool is the audit of her social circle. Behavioral observations suggest that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. If a woman's inner circle is filled with single, bitter women who actively disparage marriage and encourage recreational dating, your relationship is already in danger. This is the peer group pressure. When she has a disagreement with you, she won't go to someone who values the sanctity of the home. She will go to someone who tells her to get back on the apps. If her friends are living a lifestyle of discretionary infidelity, she is being conditioned to see betrayal as a lifestyle choice rather than a moral failure. You are the victim of environmental influence when you think your frame is stronger than the culture she surrounds herself with. Furthermore, we must discuss the requirement of boredom tolerance. Long-term loyalty requires the ability to be bored without seeking a dopamine hit from a stranger. Behavioral patterns show that women who are prone to cheating often have a low threshold for stability. They equate peace with lack of spark. If the woman you are dating is constantly seeking high highs, if she's addicted to social media validation, or if she becomes anxious when the relationship enters a comfortable phase, she is a high-risk candidate for infidelity. She is seeking a drug, and you are just the dealer. Once your supply of excitement runs low, she will look for a new provider. You are the victim of stimulation addiction when you try to compete with the infinite options on her phone. You must also look at her relationship with the truth. Behavioral observations suggest that small lies are the scouts for big betrayals. If she lies to her boss, her parents, or her friends about small things to avoid drama, she has already established a neurological pathway for deception. She sees lying as a conflict resolution tool. In her mind, she isn't being bad, she's just managing the situation. But a man of value understands that integrity is a binary. You either have it or you don't. There is no such thing as a partial truth. If she can lie about where she went for lunch, she can lie about whose bed she was in. You are the victim of integrity erosion if you think her white lies won't eventually turn black. The third sign to watch for is the validation hunger. A woman who is secure in herself does not need the gaze of every man in the room to feel valuable. Behavioral patterns show that women who are high risk for cheating often use their attractiveness as their only currency. They dress provocatively, not for you, but for the market. They spend hours curating a digital identity that signals availability. This is the constant auction. She is always up for bid, even while she is sold to you. If she cannot survive a day without likes and comments from strangers, her oxytocin levels are tied to external validation rather than internal connection. You are the victim of digital polygamy when you are sharing her attention with 10,000 other men. To stop the cycle, you must enter the phase of strategic observation. Most men date to impress. A sovereign man dates to inspect. When you meet a woman, you aren't trying to prove you are worthy of her, you are evaluating if she is worthy of your legacy. This shift in frame changes everything. You begin to notice the micro-contempt she shows towards her father. You notice the way she talks about her friends behind their backs. You notice her financial irresponsibility. All of these are behavioral markers of a low-integrity individual. You are the victim of self-blinding when you let her physical beauty mute your logical alarm. Most men rush into commitment because they are afraid of loneliness. They see a pretty face and a sweet voice, and they stop asking the hard questions. But the sovereign man understands that time is the great revealer. You cannot know a woman's character in 3 months. You need to see her in stress, in boredom, and in conflict. You need to see how she treats people who can do nothing for her. If she is kind to you but cruel to the waiter, she isn't a kind person. She is just performing for you. You are the victim of premature commitment if you give her the keys to your kingdom before she has proven she can defend the gates. You have to realize that your peace of mind is the most expensive thing you own. To protect it, you must be willing to be ruthless in your screening. It is better to be alone and strong than to be partnered and paranoid. Behavioral observations suggest that men who have a high standard for entry into their lives actually attract higher quality women. When you show that you are willing to walk away the moment her integrity falters, you are signaling that you are a man of value. A low-value woman will be terrified of your standards. A high-value woman will be inspired by them. You are the victim of standard dilution if you accept less than you are. The biological toll on a man who picks the wrong woman is devastating. When you are in a relationship with a high-risk cheater, your brain is never at rest. You are in a state of hypervigilance. This causes a massive drain on your cognitive resources. You cannot focus on your business, your health, or your purpose because you are too busy managing her moods and monitoring her shadows. You are sacrificing your greatness to maintain a sickness. To avoid this, you must prioritize emotional stability over sexual chemistry. Chemistry is a spark that can burn the house down. Stability is the hearth that keeps the house warm. I don't make content for the average mindset. I make it for the man who holds himself accountable, the one who can say no to distractions, not because someone told him to, but because he decided to. If you're not ready to work on yourself, this won't resonate. But if you are, you belong here. Most people watch and move on. If you're different, subscribe and comment. Show yourself you're serious. The fourth pillar of avoiding another cheater is the enforcement of the respect baseline. Behavioral patterns show that infidelity almost always begins with a slow erosion of respect. It starts with small disrespects, eye-rolling, interrupting you, or testing your boundaries in public. If you allow these small breaches, you are signaling that your walls are weak. Psychological observations suggest that a woman will not cheat on a man she truly respects because the cost of losing his leadership is too high. You must become a man who is comfortable with consequential leadership. This means that when a boundary is crossed, there is a cost. Not a fight, not a scream, but a withdrawal of your presence. You are the victim of boundary decay when you try to negotiate for the respect that should be a prerequisite for your time. Psychological observations suggest that the most successful men in dating utilize the long lead vet. Most men are in such a rush to escape loneliness that they commit to a woman's representative before they meet the real woman. It takes at least 6 to 12 months for the mask of a high-conflict or high-risk individual to slip. During this time, the winner remains emotionally unentangled. He observes how she handles no. He observes how she reacts when he doesn't respond to her texts immediately. He's looking for emotional regulation. A woman who explodes or withdraws when she doesn't get her way is a woman who will look for revenge or solace in another man's arms the moment you have a real argument. Let's look at the path of Damien. Damien was a man who had lost everything in a previous divorce caused by his ex-wife's secret life. When Damien started dating again, he didn't lead with his need. He met a woman named Alina. Alina was captivating, but Damien noticed she had a habit of checking her phone every time they were together, and she was vague about her male friends at work. Instead of ignoring it like Felix did, Damien stayed in his observer frame. Damien is the winner in our story because he prioritized data over desire. One evening, Elena made a comment about how everyone flirts a little at work to get ahead. Instead of laughing it off, Damien realized this was a window into her moral framework. He didn't argue, he didn't try to change her, he simply realized she didn't meet his integrity standard. He ended the relationship the next day. Damien won because he understood that the cost of being alone is nothing compared to the cost of being with the wrong woman. He protected his peace before it could be stolen. He realized that a king does not beg for loyalty. He creates an environment where only the loyal can survive. The fifth survival tip is the audit of her relationship with her father. While not an absolute rule, behavioral observations suggest that a woman's first male bond often sets the template for her future behavior. If she has an unresolved conflict or a deep resentment towards her father, she may subconsciously view all men as targets for retribution or sources to be manipulated. Psychological patterns show that a woman who respects her father is significantly more likely to respect the authority and frame of her husband. You aren't blaming her for her past, you are assessing the tools she has to build a stable future. You are the victim of generational trauma when you try to be the healer for a wound you didn't cause.
We must also discuss the psychology of the social media trap. In the modern world, a woman's phone is her digital backyard. Behavioral patterns show that a woman of integrity keeps her backyard clean. If she is constantly seeking external male attention through thirst traps or ambiguous messaging with guy friends, she is keeping her market value active while pretending to be off the market. This is micro-cheating. It is the practice of keeping backup options in the cloud. A sovereign man does not compete with a cloud of strangers. He sets a clear digital boundary. If she values the likes of strangers more than the peace of her man, she is a high-risk asset that should be liquidated immediately. The sixth marker is the requirement of shared mission. Infidelity often happens in a vacuum. If the relationship is only about consumption, eating out, watching movies, having sex, there is no structure to hold it together when the spark fades. Behavioral observations suggest that couples who build together, whether it's a business, a homestead, or a deep spiritual life, have a much higher resilience to outside interference. You must choose a woman who wants to be a co-pilot, not just a passenger. A passenger gets bored and looks for a new ride. A co-pilot is invested in the flight. You are the victim of purposeless union when your relationship is built on entertainment instead of legacy. You must also understand the law of the slow exit. Most men who are cheated on stay far too long after the first red flag. They think that talking it out will fix a character flaw. But character is not a misunderstanding, it is a foundation. Behavioral patterns show that the first sign is usually the only sign you need. If she lies once, she will lie twice. If she hides the phone once, she is hiding a world. Healing involves the shortening of the fuse. You must be willing to exit the moment the data suggests she is no longer a high-integrity partner. You are the victim of sunk cost fallacy when you stay because of time spent rather than quality maintained. The final psychological marker in this section is the reclamation of the self-sufficient soul. To avoid another cheater, you must reach a point where you want a woman but do not need her for your survival. When you need a woman, you become blind to her flaws because you are terrified of the void her absence would leave. Behavioral observations suggest that a man who is whole on his own is the hardest to deceive. He has no desperation to cloud his vision. He looks at her as a complement to his mission, not the mission itself. This abundance mindset is your greatest protection. A predator can smell mead from a mile away. She is repelled by strength. You are currently the general of your own internal army. You have been ambushed in the past because your intelligence reports were weak, but today you are upgrading your radar. You are learning to see the shadows before they become betrayals. You owe it to your ancestors, your future children, and the man you are becoming to be the most discerning version of yourself. Do not let soft emotions override hard observations. I have a smart question for the men who have the stamina to finish this 12,000-word blueprint for the future. If you were investing your entire life savings into a company and you found out the CEO had a history of embezzling from every previous business they ran, would you still sign the contract because they had a beautiful office, or would you run and find a partner with a clean audit? You are the investor. Your life is the capital. Your partner is the CEO. Stop investing in embezzlers. Drop a comment below and tell the Brotherhood what was the one red flag you ignored in the past that you will never ignore again. How has your screening process changed since you started valuing your peace more than your passion? Share your rules of engagement. Your standard might be the safety net for a brother who is about to make the same mistake you once made. Let's sharpen the sword of discernment together. If you made it all the way to the end, I genuinely appreciate you. That tells me you're not just watching, you're thinking, you're reflecting, you're working on yourself, and you're not alone in that anymore. There's a community here of men choosing growth over excuses. If this message gave you something valuable, subscribe and be part of it. Leave a comment, I read them, and your voice matters here. Keep doing the work. I'll see you in the next one.